All right, Saagar, what are you looking at?
Well, yesterday we did a brief update on some developments in the Epstein scandal, largely focusing on Prince Andrew's disastrous interview with BBC News on his past close relationship to the now deceased pedophile. Andrews made a fool out of himself on several occasions, and he even tried to insinuate that a photo of him with his arm wrapped around a 17-year-old girl may have been doctored. Let's take a listen to that gem before we move on.
The problem was the fact that once he had been convicted,
you stayed with him.
I stayed with him, and that's the bit that as it were, I kick myself for on a daily basis, because it was not something that was becoming of a member of the royal family, and we try and uphold the highest standards and practices, and I let the side down. Simple as that.
One of Epstein's accusers, Virginia Roberts, has made allegations against you. She says she met you in 2001. She says she dined with you, danced with you at Tramp nightclub in London. She went on to have sex with you in a house in Belgravia belonging to Ghislaine Maxwell, your friend. Your response?
I have no recollection of ever meeting this lady. None whatsoever.
His obvious moral equivocation, and refusal to take responsibility for what he has done is an example of the hideous attitudes that permeate our global elite, and exactly what ABC News was covering up for when it did not run its story about Epstein. Yesterday, as I briefly mentioned, House Leader Kevin McCarthy sent a letter to ABC News President James Goldstein with a series of questions which are worth highlighting here in full. The letter demands the full interview that anchor Amy Robach conducted with the alleged victim Virginia Roberts back in 2015, and asks a series of questions, including when ABC News executives learned from Robach about the story, who was involved in deciding this story wasn't of public interest, asking Robach to expand on the outside forces that tried to quash the story, whether ABC itself was ever presented with additional evidence on Epstein after Robach's reporting, and if they ever alerted any authorities after learning of the horrific allegations made against him. The final sentence of the letter is the true death knell for ABC, however, with McCarthy and others writing, quote, "It is imperative that the public be assured newsroom decisions regarding exposing human trafficking are not tampered by financial interest or outside forces." This is, of course, the entire problem with massive corporate consolidation and control over the U.S. media. Their purpose is no longer to expose the powerful, but instead to defend, cover for, and propagandize on their behalf. I used to be naive, and I think that this only extended to government policy, like shilling for so-called free trade or other woke liberal policies that give them cover for selling out American workers. But the Epstein and the Weinstein stories taught me it is far worse than that. They will cover up even the most horrific crimes to protect the reputations of those at the highest echelons of our society. A congressional inquiry into this matter would be absolutely explosive news in a real world, and yet, as I predicted yesterday, not a single major network morning show in America decided to cover this letter. ABC, I guess we can all understand that one. They're trying to sweep this under the rug. But CBS and NBC? Well, one has an ousted former CEO for sexual harassment, and the other is riddled with people who just got exposed by Ronan Farrow for covering up for Harvey Weinstein. The media is completely missing from this entire story. Independent journalists like James O'Keefe, Megyn Kelly, and Yashar Ali are the only ones who have offered any substantive reporting on the matter. Other outlets, which can tell you what certain Fox News anchors like for breakfast, don't seem to have any apparent interest in the cover-up at ABC or the egregious steps that the network has taken since the video of Amy Robach was released. To this date, all ABC News has done is launch an internal leak hunting investigation for the person who leaked this video. This leak hunting operation went so far as to identify the original employee who clipped and saved Robach speaking to an internal database and then get her fired from a new job at CBS News. This poor girl found the clip horrifying. She decided to clip the footage and never thought about it again. Now look at her speaking with Megyn Kelly recently about how she was treated.
And I just, I wasn't even given the professional courtesy to defend myself. I didn't know what I'd been accused of. It was, humiliating. It was devastating.
Have you ever spoken to James O'Keefe of Project Veritas?
No, never. I didn't even know who he was until this week.
And hadn't communicated with anybody who works there in any way, shape, or form?
No, yeah, I've never communicated with anyone over there.
The person who should be crying and out of a job is not this poor girl. It should be the people who covered for Epstein at ABC News. With a just and a real media, perhaps something would be done about it. But for now, let's all hope at least the U.S. Congress can get some real answers. And I think, Crystal, I mean, everybody can see that clip of that girl and just be like, this is wrong.
Oh, it makes
this is
me
unjust.
It makes me so mad. Right. And that she did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong. And she was at a new news organization and it got her fired it's just so outrageous. Something that Matt Taibbi always points out is the fact that, when Epstein was alive and he was headed to trial, all these news organizations were reluctantly staffing up to cover this and cover what allegations came out. The moment he died, that was it.
Yeah,
they all were like, okay, nothing to see here. We're done here. When, no, you're not done here. There is so much to know about who knew what and when and who was implicated and how he was able to pull this off for so many years, operating at the most elite echelon of our society.
And they can't investigate it because it means investigating themselves.
That's it.
Their own complicity. That's why it's like Megyn Kelly, who doesn't work for anybody. Why is she scooping the entire news media on this? Why is Yashar, who doesn't work for anybody, the only person giving us real-time updates about what's happening in ABC News? Where the hell is every major, well-paid media reporter in this country on this story? They are gone. Why did Project Veritas have to put that video out? And here's the thing. That didn't come out on the Washington Post. It had to come out on Twitter. Why are all of these things? Thank God for the internet, right? Thank God that we can at least live in a place where there's some sort of check on these institutions, because in the past, we would have heard about nothing.
Right.
None of this would have come out. And yet, it's just so shocking that that they will completely ignore. It just makes them look worse, and it just shows their complicity in real time. And they're hoping that the millions of people who know about this story will just go to sleep and become anesthetized. But people are waking up.
Well, and then you wonder why so many people get engaged in these conspiracy theories online and things that are, sound wild and crazy, and in many cases really are wild and crazy and baseless. But the reason that they're open to these ideas is because real cover-ups of real conspiracies like this one actually really do happen. And you can't trust the news media to hold powerful people to account because they're more interested in getting their sit down with Hillary Clinton or their sit down with Will and Kate than they are actually exposing the truth. Kudos to Megyn Kelly here. How hard was it to find this young woman? How hard was it? Not hard at all.
Hard.
How many other news organizations called her?
Right.
Probably none.
Probably none.
Next up on Rising, Medicare for All will probably take up a fair amount of time in tomorrow's Democratic debate in Atlanta. Some candidates have shifted midstream with their take on what should happen with M4A.
But at least one candidate's proposal hasn't changed, Bernie Sanders. His national policy director, Josh Orton, he contrasts his plan with other candidates, and he profiles a few other Sanders proposals next.